Hello and welcome back to another episode of Watching Washington. I'm John Waterworth.
And I'm Emily Weisensteiner. It's October 20th, and today we're going to take you through the ongoing conflict in Israel, growing concerns over national security, and what's unfolding in our House of Representatives.
New today, after a televised address to the nation last night, President Biden is asking Congress for an aid package of $105 billion. That aid would go to help Israel, Ukraine, the southern U.S. border, and more. President Biden made the address after returning from a trip to Israel. There, he helped broker a deal between Israel and Egypt. Biden said his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, had agreed to open the Rafah crossing into Gaza for humanitarian aid. According to Biden, up to 20 trucks of aid would be allowed into Gaza, with the first delivery set for Friday, October 20th. It's important to note that these supplies will pass through Egypt's Rafah crossing and not any territories controlled by Israel. Israel has reiterated it would not allow aid through its crossings until the Hamas released about 200 hostages seized during the cross-border attack on October 7th.
Tuesday night, a deadly blast struck a Gaza hospital. The Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital was providing shelter for thousands of people when the blast occurred. It is located in the center of Gaza City. Beyond just its patients, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said it was also sheltering many people who had been forcibly evacuated from their homes. The total death toll remains unknown, but is being reported that it ranges from 200 to 500 people who lost their lives in this attack, and many of the victims are still lost under the rubble. The exact cause of the explosion is still unknown, as no one seems to be taking responsibility, but both Israel and Hamas have been quick to point fingers.
Blame for the hospital blast has been traded from both sides. Hamas was quick to blame Israel for the explosion, but Israel claimed that they did not have a part in the blast. President Biden weighed in on the matter last Wednesday while visiting Israel to speak with Israeli President Netanyahu.
Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world. I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza.
While President Biden states that intelligence has confirmed that it was a misfired rocket that hit the hospital, members of the Arab world aren't as convinced. This was evident when the leaders of Jordan and Egypt canceled their meeting with President Biden that was set to take place in Jordan following President Biden's stay in Tel Aviv. This blast is a critical moment of the war so far and could define the future trajectory of the conflict.
In the wake of this weekend's terror attack in Israel, the United States imposed sanctions on 10 members of Hamas this past Wednesday. The Treasury Department says those sanctions include those associated with Hamas's secret investment portfolio, 2 senior Hamas officials, a Gaza-based currency exchange, and its operator. Senior Treasury officials plan to travel to the region to continue to coordinate with partners to track, freeze, and seize Hamas-related assets. And President Joe Biden is already in Israel this week showing his support for the country.
Earlier this week, Jim Jordan lost the first round of balloting on the House Speaker's vote. Representative Jordan, a Republican from Ohio, was bested by Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York, 212 to 200. All 212 Democrats of the House voted unanimously for Jeffries, whereas 20 House Republicans voted for others. Neither candidate managed to reach the 217 votes required to win the speakership.
Pitch to members on the resolution as a way to lower the temperature and get back to work. We decided that wasn't where we're going to go. I'm still running for speaker, and I plan to go to the floor and get the votes and win this race. But I want to go talk with a few of my colleagues. Particularly, I want to talk with the 20 individuals who voted against me so that we can move forward and begin to work for the American people.
We are inherently reasonable about the path forward. We recognize that the reality of this Congress has been that nothing meaningful has occurred unless it's been bipartisan. And all we want to do is facilitate a path for that to be able to continue.
A secondary House Speaker vote is being held today, Friday the 20th. Only time will tell if Representative Jordan will be able to hold his ground.
Moving back to our coverage on the Israel and Hamas conflict. Following the attacks in Israel last week, controversies has made its way across college campuses in the U.S. A coalition of more than 30 students from Harvard University posted a letter to social media claiming that Israel was entirely responsible for the violence that killed thousands overseas, according to a source from the New York Times. Now these students affiliated have been doxxed with their personal information being posted online. On campus, a truck with a digital billboard circulated Harvard Square, displaying the names and photos of students who are affiliated with the organizations that signed the statement. Alongside this public display, billionaire hedge fund CEO Bill Ackman and other business leaders demand Harvard release the names of the student participants so they know not to hire them in the future, according to a source from CNN. The controversy at Harvard is also being observed across other institutions, including Stanford University and the University of Pennsylvania. The display happening nationwide amid the conflict overseas raises the question of whether free speech should be protected within the educational spaces or if the actions of these students justify the aftermath that followed.
A recent New York Times article has brought attention to a growing national security concern regarding Bitcoin mining operations across the U.S. and the risk it poses to data in key areas. A systemic operation has been identified to both gather information from government facilities across the country and has been linked to officials in the Chinese government and wealthy Chinese nationals as well. One such mining operation in Texas is owned and operated by Singapore national and crypto pioneer Wu Jihan. Jihan stated that Texas was an ideal place for the operation, where the facility draws 563 megawatts from its power grid. The former Assistant Director of Homeland Security highlighted the energy concerns, stating, quote, "The operations could place enormous stress on the grid if the mines worked in concert to wreak havoc," end quote. These energy concerns are currently ongoing in 12 states, placing them at risk to widespread blackouts and targeted attacks. Bitcoin mining operations in the U.S. account for 40,000 megawatts of power, enough energy to power 3 million American homes. Join us later on for our guest interview with the co-author Gabriel Dance, Deputy Investigations Editor for the New York Times.
At Purdue University, we're not just students, we're future leaders. Join Air Force ROTC to embark on a journey of honor, excellence, and service. Learn, lead, and soar to new heights. It's not just a commitment, it's a calling. Purdue Air Force ROTC, where dreams take flight. Are you ready to rise? I got a switch in my head. I go from living to dead. You got me seeing all red. Now I'm becoming.
The Center for C-SPAN, which is this organization, the CCSC, what we do is we facilitate like a bunch of organizations, different programs for Brian Lamb, which is the founder of C-SPAN. Anyone can be part of CCSC, whether it be through our various internships, our competitions, just to be involved, even like our student community meetings that we have every week. Anyone can go, you don't have to be communications or poli-sci. You just meet so many people, the connections you make is kind of crazy, the range that CCSC has. So yeah, it's just provided me so many opportunities to like kind of achieve the goals I have personally and forward to like whatever career paths I choose.
This week, NPR reported that a few college campuses have started offering drug testing strips to their students. These test strips have the ability to detect drugs such as fentanyl, which is often found laced with other drugs and causing deadly side effects. At some campuses, naloxone is being offered. This drug will reverse an opioid overdose. State University of New York's Delhi campus is one among a few other campuses that have begun offering these test strips to its students. Unfortunately, some campuses are not as open to the idea of offering these test strips to the students, mainly for the reason that drug test strips have not yet been legalized in all 50 states. Some health departments have published statements that it is wise to add drug test strips to a college student's back-to-school packing list. With fentanyl being involved in the vast majority of teen overdose deaths in 2021, you can never be too careful.
It seems that Amazon's 2013 predictions of drone delivery are quickly becoming a reality. According to the Associated Press, Amazon has begun testing drones specifically designed to deliver medical prescriptions. The test subject, College Station, Texas, now has access to drone delivery. Amazon claims that the prescriptions will be delivered within an hour of placing the order and that the drone will fly from a secure pharmacy to the customer's address to drop a padded package off at the door. Customers will have over 500 non-controlled medical substances to choose from and access. After testing delivery of common household items last December in College Station, Amazon decided to expand to prescriptions per customer request. Although many companies have attempted this form of delivery, most have faced hurdles from regulators that desire safe operation. Amazon has clearly met those requirements and has proven once again that Jeff Bezos is ahead of the curve.
The city of Seattle has raised the minimum wage to almost $20, one of the highest in the country. Washington State boasts one of the highest minimum wages in the United States, with the statewide minimum sitting at $15.74 an hour. Seattle decided to go a step further when they increased their own city minimum wage to $19.97 an hour for employees not receiving certain benefits from their own workplaces. This 6% increase will put Seattle in front of the city of SeaTac, which has a $19.74 an hour minimum wage. SeaTac sits just 12 miles south of Seattle and used to have the highest minimum wage in the United States until Seattle's uppage.
X, formerly known as Twitter, is testing an annual fee for some unverified accounts. The social media company announced Tuesday that it is testing a new program called Not a Bot. It will require new users in New Zealand and the Philippines to sign up for a $1 annual subscription to post and interact with other posts. New users in the testing region can opt out of the subscription service, but they will only be able to read posts, watch videos, and follow accounts. Existing users will not be affected as this is part of a test. The company said the program aims to reduce spam and bot activity on the platform. The test comes as Elon Musk has encouraged users to sign up for X's premium subscription. Last month, Musk even hinted that X could start charging all users.
Union leaders representing tens of thousands of Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers said on Friday morning that they'd reached a tentative labor agreement. Their 3-day work stoppage earlier this month was the largest ever in the U.S. healthcare industry. About 75,000 employees at one of the nation's leading nonprofit healthcare systems went on strike. The coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions and the company thanked the acting U.S. Labor Secretary for her involvement in reaching the tentative agreement. The strike included professionals such as nurses, radiographers, ultrasound sonographers, and some home health aides and pharmacists. The union coalition said earlier this month it would only accept a, quote, unified wage across all of Kaiser's regions, which includes 8 states and Washington, D.C.
More than 150 million Americans get health insurance through their jobs, and according to a new report released on Wednesday morning, the monthly costs for those health plans have risen in the year 2023. Every year, a team from the nonpartisan health research group KFF calls companies all over the country to ask about their health care plans and then analyze the data. According to their research, 7% was the national average increase in premiums for employer-sponsored health insurance in 2023, making the annual cost of family health insurance average about $24,000 and single coverage to rise about $8,500 in 2023. As a result, the tight job market has prompted companies to avoid watering down their health insurance coverage as they argued it can be used as a recruiting and retention tool. Nonetheless, workers should prepare for premiums to take a bigger bite out of their paychecks in the coming years as the cost will only continue to rise. Our in-studio guest this week is Gabriel Dance, a Pulitzer-prize winning investigative editor for the New York Times and member of the Marshall Project, who is responsible for the unveiling of secret surveillance by the NSA.
The full interview with Nolan just ahead on Watching Washington.
We are energetic, we are motivating, and we are unique.
I don't think you can beat Quidditch.
Are you looking for a new hobby?
you want to have a fun evening with your friends,
then come climb to new heights at the Co-Rec Climbing Wall.
I am now joined by Gabriel Dance, a deputy investigative editor for the New York Times, who, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm a little nervous if you didn't notice.
Yeah, don't worry, Nolan. I got nervous I was doing an interview the other day for I think the Texas Standard. I can't remember exactly. And I was super nervous at the beginning, and I've done this a lot of different times. So just take a few deep breaths and, you know, and do this as many times as you need.
Oh, thanks. But I think once we get rolling, I'll be good into it. But so the first thing I wanted to say was when I found this article, like when it got sent through our family group chat last weekend, because that was the first place I saw it. I have been following the Bitcoin and crypto world for a while now, but from the perspective of a college student. So I think that differs very much from the perspective of you as a journalist, whereas the national security concerns and the energy concerns, which we previously discussed in our show earlier, those things obviously have immense implications on each and every one of our personal data and our lives. But to a college student, they might not understand how this stock that they think can make them money translates into this grand kind of thing. So could you kind of like take us through it a little bit more?
Sure. So what I've been focusing on is the industry known as Bitcoin mining. And Bitcoin, as you've discussed, is a cryptocurrency that is often thought of as kind of a speculative financial asset, which is to say, what you alluded to is probably some of your friends buy Bitcoin. They hope the price of Bitcoin goes up so that they can sell their Bitcoin for more money. The way Bitcoin is actually made, so to speak, is through a process called mining. This mining process is an extremely energy-intensive process wherein millions of computers are basically just guessing and trying to guess a specific number. And by putting in the time and effort and the money to have these guessing computers, if one of the computers guesses correctly, they are rewarded with Bitcoin. This is known as a consensus mechanism. It's the way you remove a third party, such as a bank, from the financial process. And in essence, it is the way they call it proof of work. And by proving you're willing to do the work, then you're willing to, or you get the opportunity to make Bitcoin. In effect, this process is extremely wasteful of energy because all of the people who are guessing, only one guesses correctly, and all of the energy spent on the other guesses is essentially wasted. But my first article went in depth on how that works.
Yes.
The most recent article that you're speaking about talks to some of the national security implications that Bitcoin miners can have. These Bitcoin mining operations can consume as much energy as a city easily. Some of the operations in Texas use as much power as 300,000 homes.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
One of the things that Bitcoin miners like to discuss is their ability to balance the grid. And they do this by adapting the energy usage based on how much electricity the grid operator needs them to use.
Now, does that protect from targeted blackouts?
Yes. So the electrical grid is a very interesting and delicate balance where supply needs to nearly exactly meet demand. And so the miners are paid to participate in programs where if the demand grows too high, so let's say it's an afternoon in Texas where a bunch of people come home and they flip on their air conditioners and all of a sudden the demand for energy peaks. Well, if there's not enough generation to meet that demand, the grid operator will pay the Bitcoin miner to turn down to reduce the amount of demand on the system.
Wow, that's quite shocking that they have to, pay a fee to alleviate strain on the electrical system. But so going over a couple more of these national security concerns, could you talk a little bit more about who is like, the big minds behind these Bitcoin mining operations?
Sure. So the concern is the same way that the miners can help with the delicate balance, the possibility also exists that they could exacerbate the problems or even cause blackouts or rolling blackouts by what's called pulsing the grid, which would be turning on and off rapidly at times when the grid is in a delicate balance. And so the question is, who are the ultimate owners of these mining operations, and can we trust them to act in a responsible manner? Because these Bitcoin mines are not regulated. And so what my colleague Mike Forsyth and I found is that many of these mines are being operated by Chinese nationals who have direct connections to the Chinese government or political party. And I want to make sure that it's clear that this is not there is not a problem with Chinese nationals or any other country necessarily owning or operating Bitcoin mines or other equipment. But when they have direct ties to the Chinese government or political parties, we do know that there is a national security concern with regards to China trying to become ensconced in the US energy grid. And so that is an issue.
Yeah. And do you think that has any relation to the fact that China themselves banned Bitcoin mining in 2021?
Well, I think actually the reason why China banned Bitcoin mining is because they were afraid that Chinese nationals were using this crazy industry where you can change electricity into Bitcoin to essentially exfiltrate Chinese yuan, their national currency, into Bitcoin, which is then outside the control of their authoritarian government.
Oh,
so
wow.
that's primarily the reason why China banned Bitcoin mining, that is to say. But I do think, to your point, there is no chance that China would allow US operators of Bitcoin mines to sit down in China next to one of their electrical substations and attach directly to their electrical grid.
Yes, especially well, could you go into a little bit more detail about how these operations were close in proximity to government facilities?
Yes. So the most glaring example we found is a Bitcoin mine that is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this Bitcoin mine, which is owned by a conglomerate of Chinese companies, was actually brought to our attention because we were able to discover a report filed by Microsoft. And Microsoft ran a data center that was performing duties supportive of Pentagon. So they were doing things for the Department of Defense. And they were concerned that this Chinese Bitcoin mine had settled down about 100 feet from their data centers. They were also concerned, however, because less than a mile away is a US Air Force base, one of three that is in charge of the nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles. So they filed a report with the US government saying that they were concerned about this Chinese Bitcoin mine being in close proximity both to themselves and the Air Force base. And the US government confirmed that they were investigating.
Now, that was definitely one of the most shocking things I read in that entire article. I think one of the most one of the best things I read was one of the last lines. I think his name was Wu Jihan, and he said that it was discussing how they chose Texas specifically, and just the way he said it really it made me just tongue in cheek a little bit.
Yes, I actually think that was Kevin Pan at the very end who's saying that they feel lucky they chose Texas and they chose America. It is interesting. It speaks to the opportunity that the United States affords foreign nationals and including residents, where they welcome business in Texas and they welcome the opportunity to support the fossil fuel industry with loose regulations and those types of things. And again, that can be beneficial to local economies. It can also raise the prices of electricity, increase the amount of pollution, and also potentially have danger to their national security.
Absolutely. And I think that at the end of the day, I think the most striking thing to say from one's own public perspective is that this is serious implications on our energy grid and the power that I think I have one final question for you that ties into exactly what you're saying, which is, do you believe that Bitcoin has any intrinsic or technological value that outweighs the risks they pose to both our national security and energy grids? Sorry.
That's a good question. I do not think Bitcoin has qualities that outweigh the environmental damage that the mining process inflicts, or the national security concerns that some of these mining operations bring to the grid. That said, I do think that there is something to be said for a currency that lies outside the grasp of whether it be governments or banks or those types of things. But for a variety of reasons, Bitcoin is not that currency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would agree, definitely. And that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward with this new technology. Thank you so much, Gabe, for joining me for this extraordinary opportunity to talk to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Nolan. This concludes our episode of Watching Washington. Join us next week for the continued coverage as these stories unfold.
Imagine a world where Olympics and Paralympics are unified as one, and where all athletes at all levels have equal opportunities to play and perform at their full potential.
Athletics has been such an influential and transformative aspect of my life. So to me, RISE is about ensuring that every person that has the desire to participate in sport has the opportunity to do so.
This organization is about recognition. We believe in recognizing excellence where it is found, especially in Paralympic sports.
RISE is about driving change in our community and beyond. We hope that through our events and initiatives, we can galvanize people for our cause and inspire them to create an ever-growing network to help achieve our mission.
It's about connecting people of various backgrounds and who truly care about creating meaningful change together.
We develop projects and hold events to bring people together at the interface of inclusivity, sports, and engineering.
Our goal is to promote the equality of all sports and to improve sports performance and accessibility.
Join us so that you can have a major contribution in creating meaningful change.
Are you looking for a new hobby? Or do you want to have a fun evening with your friends?
Then come climb to new heights at the climbing wall.